There's a certain kind of woman you'll never fully figure out. She doesn't flood her feed with selfies, doesn't announce where she is, doesn't invite the world into her private moments. She doesn't post herself, and yet she's the one who lingers in your mind long after the loud ones fade. There's something about her silence that feels heavier than 1,000 filtered smiles. She exists like a ghost of elegance in a digital wasteland. While everyone else performs, she observes. While others seek validation, she withdraws it. And the paradox is this: her absence speaks louder than all their noise. Jean Baudrillard once wrote that we live in an age of simulation, where the image replaces the real. Everything is performed, not lived. Every post becomes proof of existence. And in that theater of illusions, the woman who doesn't show herself becomes something almost sacred. She resists the marketplace of exposure. She denies the camera its power to consume her. She refuses to be converted into a symbol that others can manipulate, measure, and desire on command. In a world obsessed with visibility, she becomes powerful precisely because she remains unseen. Men often misread that silence. They think she's shy, modest, or uninterested. But what if her silence is calculation? What if she has seen through the illusion that the digital gaze brings intimacy? She knows that the moment she becomes visible, she becomes vulnerable to a world that devours mystery. Baudrillard warned that modernity turns people into reflections of themselves, not real, but replicas of how they wish to be perceived. The woman who doesn't post has escaped that mirror. She has chosen to exist in reality while others chase the shadow of it. And here's what most men don't realize: attention has become the new form of currency, and withholding it is the highest form of control. When she doesn't post, she isn't just protecting her privacy, she's controlling your imagination. She makes you wonder. You fill in the blanks she never wrote. You start to crave what you cannot access. That's the psychological alchemy of absence. The moment a woman becomes rare, she becomes valuable. The moment she withholds herself, she becomes unforgettable. But her silence can be both virtue and weapon. Sometimes it comes from wisdom. She's grounded, self-contained, uninterested in applause. Other times, it's strategy. She understands that mystery manipulates better than beauty, that a man's mind is conquered not by what he sees, but by what he can't. She doesn't chase influence, she lets curiosity do the seduction. You'll find yourself scrolling through noise, yet thinking of her, the one who never appears. And that's when Baudrillard's warning becomes clear. When everything visible loses meaning, only the invisible commands desire. So when you meet a woman who doesn't post herself, don't mistake her quiet for weakness. Study what her silence protects: her peace, her autonomy, or her power. Because in an age where exposure is survival, she has chosen rebellion. She doesn't exist for the algorithm, and that's precisely why she dominates it. Baudrillard believed that the greatest illusion of the modern world is that visibility equals truth. The more people show, the less real they become. Everything turns into performance, a spectacle of validation. And when a woman refuses to play that game, she quietly escapes the matrix of simulation. She becomes untouchable because she no longer exists in the same dimension as those who depend on being seen to feel alive. Her absence isn't emptiness, it's armor. She walks through the digital crowd unseen, unmeasured, unowned. Men often underestimate the intelligence behind this disappearance. They think posting less is a lack of confidence, but sometimes it's a sign of someone who has transcended the need for digital mirrors. The woman who doesn't post herself is dangerous in the way depth always is. You can't study her through pixels, can't predict her through patterns. She doesn't give you the data to decode her. She withholds just enough to force you to confront your own projections. Because what fills the space of her silence is your imagination, and that's where she holds the upper hand. Baudrillard once wrote that seduction is stronger than production. What he meant was that mystery always outpowers exposure. When a woman reveals everything, she becomes content, consumed, scrolled, forgotten. But when she reveals nothing, she becomes a question that lingers. Seduction, in its purest form, is the art of creating absence. It's the ability to evoke curiosity without surrendering substance. The woman who doesn't post has mastered that. She doesn't fight for attention, she makes attention fight for her. You'll notice something strange when you talk to such women. They listen more than they speak. Their eyes feel anchored, like they're not distracted by performance but present in the moment. They're not building an image, they're living a life. And that authenticity radiates in ways that filters can't imitate. Men who've been conditioned to chase stimulation will find these women unsettling because there's no easy entry point, no profile to scroll through, no highlights to decode. You have to meet them as they are, not as they perform to be. And that, in a world of masks, is terrifying for most men. But here's where Baudrillard's warning deepens. He said that when everything becomes visible, desire dies. Because desire needs distance. It needs mystery, uncertainty, the ache of not knowing. That's why these women are magnetic. Their silence restores that lost distance. Their restraint resurrects the forgotten art of longing. She doesn't feed your gaze, she starves it until you realize your hunger is the only proof that she exists. That's the cruel genius of her psychology. She knows what every algorithm doesn't. That scarcity, not exposure, is the real engine of desire. So the next time you find yourself drawn to a woman who never posts herself, remember, you're not attracted to her content. You're captivated by her control. In a culture that sells transparency as virtue, she has chosen invisibility as strategy. And that makes her not just rare, but powerful. In Baudrillard's world, visibility is seduction's death. The moment something becomes fully seen, it loses its soul. The woman who doesn't post understands this intuitively, even if she's never read a word of his philosophy. She knows that mystery isn't about hiding, it's about controlling revelation. The world has convinced everyone to expose themselves completely, to trade privacy for attention and attention for validation. But she resists. She doesn't upload her face for algorithms to study, doesn't turn her body into public property. In that restraint, she becomes sovereign. She owns her image instead of letting her image own her. And this, men must understand, the woman who doesn't post isn't necessarily humble. She's often strategic. Her silence is her filter. Her invisibility is her power. She knows that when everyone else is busy broadcasting, the most desirable thing in the room is mystery. You can't screenshot her energy. You can't decode her lifestyle from a caption. She exists only in experience, not in projection. That difference terrifies shallow men because it demands presence. You can't stalk her. You have to meet her. You can't imagine her. You have to earn her reality. Baudrillard would say she has escaped the simulation. While other women chase the perfect digital self, she lives untouched by the gaze of strangers. Her beauty isn't constructed, it's remembered. Her confidence isn't recycled, it's quiet. There's no audience shaping her behavior, no invisible crowd whispering feedback. She lives in first person while others watch themselves from a distance, and that makes her rare. Because to live unobserved today is to live free. But here's where it gets complicated. Some of these women understand the economy of scarcity so well that they use it to dominate attention. They know that absence multiplies value, that curiosity can be weaponized. They don't post, not because they're disconnected, but because they're calculating. Every silence, every vanishing act, every trace of distance is intentional. They understand what Baudrillard called the hyperreal. That power in modern society doesn't come from showing truth, it comes from controlling appearances. By not appearing, she turns her lack of image into an image itself. She becomes an idea, and ideas are far more seductive than bodies. And men fall for it. They mistake her restraint for depth, her silence for purity, her mystery for authenticity. Sometimes it's real, but sometimes it's theater in disguise. Some of these women learned that silence is the most elegant form of manipulation, that when you reveal nothing, others project everything they want to see. A man will fill her absence with fantasy, his mind building stories in the vacuum she created. And once she controls your imagination, she doesn't need to do much else. Because now you're no longer seeing her. You're seeing your own desire reflected back at you. That's Baudrillard's nightmare, right there. The simulation is complete. You think you've found something real, but what you've fallen for is the illusion she allowed you to create. The woman who doesn't post might be hiding wisdom, or she might be hiding strategy. Either way, she's operating on a level that most men don't even realize exists. There's a reason Baudrillard said that our age no longer deals in truth, only in appearances. The more we try to display authenticity, the more artificial it becomes. And that's why women who don't post themselves seem to hold a power most others lost. They are not competing in the endless auction of validation. They're not offering themselves up for comparison, consumption, or commentary. They've stepped outside the algorithmic arena where self-worth is calculated in likes. They've chosen scarcity over spectacle, and that choice unsettles people, especially men who've grown addicted to visibility as proof of sincerity. You see, men often feel safest when they can see. They trust patterns, presence, frequency. A woman who posts gives him clues to decode. A woman who doesn't gives him silence, and silence is unbearable to the insecure mind. It forces him to confront his own projections. He begins to wonder, what is she hiding? Who is she with? Why doesn't she need to be seen? That uncertainty turns into fascination, and that fascination into obsession. That's the psychology of control through absence. The less she gives, the more he invests. But let's go deeper. Baudrillard's idea of the hyperreal is that in a world where everything is displayed, what disappears becomes divine. The invisible becomes holy. The woman who doesn't post elevates herself to that level. She becomes untouchable, mythic, a symbol rather than a participant. Every man thinks he knows her, but no one really does. She has weaponized mystery in a time when everyone else is bankrupt of it, and that's what gives her power. She's not competing for attention, she's commanding imagination. Yet this power can take two paths. One path leads to peace, the woman who values her inner life more than public applause. She's anchored, secure, and uninterested in performance. Her privacy is a garden where her mind grows unpolluted by judgment. She's the kind of woman who makes a man slow down, breathe, and rediscover depth. She reminds him that intimacy is something earned, not broadcast. But the other path is darker. There are women who've studied how scarcity manipulates desire. They vanish not out of peace, but precision. They know that the less they show, the more men chase, that withholding creates an emotional economy where curiosity turns into loyalty. She doesn't seduce by revealing, she seduces by disappearing. And Baudrillard warned of this, that when illusion replaces reality, we stop loving people and start loving our idea of them. A woman who doesn't post herself can live freely or rule subtly. She might protect her soul from the market of attention, or she might profit from staying hidden within it. Either way, she understands the currency of this century better than most men do. Control the image, or the image controls you. And that's the truth buried beneath her silence. Because in the end, the quiet woman online isn't defined by what she hides, she's defined by what she refuses to sell. Baudrillard warned that once everything becomes public, the private self dissolves. The woman who doesn't post herself resists that evaporation. Her refusal is not merely digital restraint, it's an existential statement. In a world that shouts, "Show me who you are," she whispers, "You'll have to find out." That difference defines the new hierarchy of power. The loud ones gather attention, the silent ones gather control. She doesn't need to prove her happiness, her beauty, or her worth. She already knows it. That's what makes her presence so heavy, even when she's absent. Most men won't understand this dynamic until it's too late. They'll fall for the illusion that visibility equals honesty. They'll think the woman who posts often is real, and the one who doesn't is hiding something. But that's the trap of modern thinking, confusing transparency with truth. A woman who hides her life might be doing the only honest thing left in a dishonest world, because when you live online, every moment becomes a performance. Every emotion becomes a brand, and she knows that to stay real, she must stay unseen. But there's a deeper psychological element men need to recognize. When a woman doesn't post, she reclaims her power of selection. She decides who gets to see her smile, who deserves her softness, who earns access to her time. She no longer lives under the dictatorship of the crowd's gaze. And when a man approaches her, he's entering sacred territory. There's no digital blueprint to follow, no curated gallery to pre-approve. He must discover her in real time, through presence, patience, and perception. That's intimacy in its rawest form, the kind that algorithms can't imitate. Baudrillard would call this the return of the real, the revival of what cannot be digitized. For men, this becomes a mirror. It exposes how dependent they've become on visible cues to feel in control. The woman who doesn't post denies him that comfort, forcing him to face his own insecurity. She makes him realize how much of his attraction depends on consumption. Without her pictures, he can't feed his imagination on demand. He must learn to connect, not consume. And yet, not all silence is virtue. Some women use this understanding of perception to orchestrate illusion. They stay invisible, not for privacy, but for strategy. Their lives are curated in absence. They understand that the fewer details they give, the more desirable they seem. That's when invisibility becomes branding. Baudrillard warned that this is the ultimate trap, when even the act of hiding becomes performance. So men must learn to tell the difference. Is her silence peace, or is it power play? Is she protecting her soul, or is she building an illusion to rule your mind? That's the warning Baudrillard left us. In a world where everyone performs, even authenticity can become an act. And the woman who doesn't post might be the only one who truly escapes the system, or its most brilliant manipulator. Either way, she reveals a truth few dare to see. Visibility isn't freedom anymore. Invisibility is. Jean Baudrillard said that once an image takes over reality, people start mistaking representation for truth. That's where we are now, millions of digital selves chasing reflections of reflections. But the woman who doesn't post herself rejects that mirror. She still knows the difference between a life lived and a life displayed. And that's precisely why she becomes the test every man must pass. Because here's the paradox. The more you crave her visibility, the more she controls you. She teaches you something you didn't know you needed to learn. Patience, presence, the art of discovery without surveillance. When you meet a woman who keeps herself offline, she exposes how dependent you've become on proof. How fragile your confidence is when you can't confirm what she's doing, where she's been, or who she's with. That tension isn't her manipulation, it's your conditioning. The system trained you to equate access with safety. She breaks that spell. Baudrillard warned that society would one day drown in signs, that truth would vanish beneath infinite representations. She's the exception. Her silence reintroduces reality. She exists beyond display, and that makes her presence, when you finally earn it, feel like a miracle. You realize how rare it is to experience someone whose existence hasn't been fragmented into pixels. You realize how intoxicating it is to stand before someone whose soul hasn't been edited. But her silence also carries a lesson for you, man to man. Ask yourself, why does her invisibility disturb you? Why does her privacy feel like distance instead of dignity? Maybe because you've forgotten what it means to live unseen, to build, to grow, to love without witnesses. Her mystery is a mirror showing you what you've lost, the ability to exist for yourself. That's Baudrillard's ultimate warning. The moment you live to be seen, you stop living. So the next time you cross paths with the woman who doesn't post herself, don't rush to decode her. Observe what she represents. In a culture addicted to exposure, she reminds you that invisibility is the final luxury, that the highest form of beauty is the one that refuses to perform, and that the truest intimacy isn't public, it's private, shared between two souls who don't need an audience. If you understand this, you'll stop chasing visibility and start cultivating depth. You'll stop mistaking display for connection, and you'll realize that real power, the kind that lasts, is born in silence, not spectacle. So if this message made you think, if it woke something in you about the way you look at women, the way you look at yourself, then don't just scroll away. Like this video, share it with the men who still believe exposure equals strength, and subscribe to the channel. Because this isn't a place for noise, it's a space for men who seek truth beyond the screen. And remember, in the age of illusion, the invisible are the ones who are truly free.